Let me tell you something straight. If you're standing here at 30, 40, maybe 50, looking at the wreckage of what you thought your life was supposed to be, you're not alone, and you're not broken. I know it feels like it. When the job's gone, the marriage has crumbled, the savings account's bleeding out, and you're sleeping on your buddy's couch or staring at the ceiling in an empty apartment. Yeah, it feels like you've been run over by a truck and then backed over for good measure. But here's what nobody tells you when you're down there in the dirt. Starting over isn't the exception in a man's life. It's practically a rite of passage. The difference is, some of us do it at 25 when we've got nothing to lose, and some of us do it later when we've got everything to lose. The later it comes, the heavier it feels. I'm not going to blow sunshine at you. Rebuilding from rubble is hard work. It's the kind of work where you're swinging a sledgehammer at 6 a.m., your hands are blistered, and you can't even see the frame of the new house yet. You're just clearing debris, and that's okay. That's exactly where you're supposed to be right now. See, most men think starting over means they failed. They look at their buddies who kept the same job for 20 years, who stayed married, who've got the house and the boat and the 401k, and they think, I'm behind, I'm less than. But that's the wrong measuring stick. Life isn't a factory line where everyone gets the same product at the same time. You know what starting over actually is? It's a second draft. It's taking everything you learned from the first build, all the mistakes, all the crooked nails, all the places where you cut corners or used cheap materials, and saying, all right, now I know better. Now I build it right. Your 20s were for learning. Your 30s, 40s, 50s, those are for building with wisdom. And wisdom only comes from having built something that didn't hold. That's not failure. That's education you paid for in full. So if you're here because you need to hear this, you've still got good years ahead. You've still got strong hands. You've still got a mind that works and a heart that beats. The foundation might be gone, but the tools are still in your belt. We're going to walk through this together, not with fairy tales, but with the real blueprint for how a man rebuilds when everything's fallen apart. If you're looking for solid ground and straight talk, hit subscribe and stay with us. We don't do quick fixes here, we do the real work. There's a reason why starting over feels like you're grieving. It's because you are. You're mourning the man you thought you'd be by now. You're mourning the life you thought was on autopilot. And nobody prepares you for that kind of loss. When you're young, you've got this picture in your head. Maybe it came from your old man, maybe from movies, maybe you just absorbed it from the air around you. You're supposed to work hard, climb the ladder, get the girl, buy the house, raise some kids, and coast into your 60s with a pension and a wood shop in the garage. That's the script. But then life comes at you sideways. The company downsizes. The marriage that you thought was solid turns out to have termites in the foundation. Your health kicks back. Your parents get old and need you. Or maybe you just wake up one day and realize you've been building someone else's dream, not yours, and the whole thing feels hollow. And when that script gets ripped up, it doesn't just hurt. It shakes your identity, because you tied who you are to what you've built. The job title, the relationship status, the house, the stuff. And when that stuff goes away, you start asking the big ugly question, who am I without all of this? That's the grief, brother. You're not just losing a job or a relationship, you're losing the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. And that kind of loss hits different than anything else because it's internal. Nobody sees it. Nobody brings casseroles. You're just walking around with this invisible weight, pretending you're fine while your entire sense of self is crumbling. Here's the hard truth. You've got to let that old version of yourself die. I don't mean give up. I mean, let go. There's a difference. You're clutching onto a version of your life that doesn't exist anymore. And every ounce of energy you spend trying to resurrect it is energy you're not putting into building what's next. Think of it like this. You ever try to build a new deck on top of rotten wood? It doesn't matter how nice the new boards are. The whole thing's going to sag and collapse because the foundation's no good. You've got to rip out the old, even if it hurts, even if it was expensive, even if you put years into it. Starting over feels like dying because part of you does have to die. The part that thought life was supposed to go a certain way. The part that tied your worth to external things. The part that never prepared for this. But here's what they don't tell you. Something new grows in that space. We've been sold a lie, and it's time to call it out. The lie is that life is supposed to be linear, a straight line from birth to success to retirement to death, with every year building neatly on top of the last one. That's not life. That's a corporate training video. Real life looks more like a mountain range. Peaks and valleys, plateaus where you're just walking steady, sheer drop-offs where you didn't see the edge coming, and sometimes you're climbing back up from the bottom of a canyon you didn't even know existed. The men who sell you the linear life myth, they're either lying or they're the statistical outliers. You know, the guy who married his high school sweetheart, got a job at his dad's company, and retired with a gold watch. Good for him, but that's not most of us. And it's definitely not you if you're reading this. Most men stumble. Most men fail at something big at least once. Most men have a season, maybe more than one, where they have to completely recalibrate and rebuild. The difference is, the ones who make it through don't waste time comparing their chapter 7 to someone else's chapter 20. Here's a better way to think about it. Life is built in seasons. There's planting season, growing season, harvest, and then winter, when everything looks dead, but really, it's just resting and getting ready for the next cycle. You don't judge a tree in winter and say it failed. You understand it's part of the process. Where you are right now, this rubble, this reset, it's winter. It doesn't feel like it because winter's cold and quiet and nothing's happening on the surface. But underground, roots are deepening. The soil's turning over. The tree's storing energy for the spring that's coming. The problem is, we live in a world that only celebrates harvest season. Social media is full of guys showing you their highlight reel, the new truck, the promotion, the vacation. Nobody posts about the 2 years they spent eating ramen and rebuilding their credit. Nobody talks about the nights they couldn't sleep because they didn't know how they'd make rent. But that's where the real growth happens. You want to know who the strongest men are? They're not the ones who never fell. They're the ones who fell hard, got back up, and rebuilt smarter. They've got scar tissue, they've got perspective, they've got humility. And those are the tools that turn a man from average into unshakable. So stop measuring yourself against some imaginary finish line. Stop thinking you're behind. You're exactly where you need to be to become the man you're supposed to be. And that man, he's forged in the fire, not handed a trophy. Rock bottom gets a bad rap. We talk about it like it's the worst thing that can happen to a man. But I'm going to tell you something that might sound crazy. Rock bottom is also the most honest place you'll ever stand. When you hit bottom, all the noise stops. The pretending stops. The keeping up with the Joneses stops. You can't fake it anymore because there's nothing left to fake with. And in that brutal honesty, you finally get to see what's real. You see who your real friends are. Not the guys who were around when you were buying rounds at the bar, but the ones who show up when you can't even afford coffee. You see what you're actually made of. Not the image you project, but the raw material underneath. And you see what actually matters because everything that doesn't matter has already been stripped away. Rock bottom teaches you that you can survive more than you thought. I've talked to men who lost everything: house, family, career, savings, and they're still here, still breathing, still putting one foot in front of the other. That's not nothing, that's everything, because once you know you can survive the worst, fear loses its grip on you. It also teaches you about pride. Most of us carry around this useless pride that keeps us from asking for help, from admitting we're struggling, from doing the humble work that doesn't come with applause. Rock bottom crushes that pride like a beer can. And good riddance. Pride's expensive, and you can't afford it when you're rebuilding. Here's the other thing rock bottom does. It shows you your patterns. When everything falls apart, you can't help but look at the wreckage and ask, how did I get here? And if you're honest, really honest, you'll see your fingerprints all over it. Maybe it's the shortcuts you took, the red flags you ignored, the responsibilities you dodged, the hard conversations you avoided. That's not about beating yourself up. That's about learning the lesson so you don't build the same broken house twice. Rock bottom is expensive tuition, but the education's real. And here's the gift that takes the longest to see. Rock bottom resets your baseline for gratitude. When you've had nothing, when you've slept in your car or wondered where your next meal's coming from, the small stuff becomes sacred again. A warm shower, a friend who checks in, a day's work that pays honest money. You stop taking things for granted because you remember what it feels like when they're gone. Rock bottom isn't where you stay, but it's where you learn who you really are. And that knowledge, that's the foundation you build the rest of your life on. All right, let's get practical. You're ready to rebuild. You're done wallowing, done making excuses, done waiting for someone to rescue you. Good. But before you start swinging hammers and drawing blueprints, you've got to clear the debris. And most men skip this part. That's why they end up rebuilding the same broken house. First step, get brutally honest about the damage. Sit down with a pen and paper, not your phone, actual paper, and write out where you are right now. Finances, health, relationships, work, mental state. No sugarcoating. No, it's not that bad. Just the facts. This isn't about shame. This is about assessment. You can't fix what you won't acknowledge. Second, stop the bleeding. What's still actively making things worse? Is it debt you're ignoring? A toxic relationship you're clinging to? Drinking too much? Scrolling too much? Lying to yourself too much? Identify the open wounds and close them first. You don't build a new house while the old one's still on fire. Third, create space, and I mean literal, physical space. Clean your living area, throw out the junk, donate the stuff you're hoarding from a life that doesn't exist anymore. I know it sounds small, but a man can't think straight in chaos. You need a clean room, a clean truck, a clean workspace. External order creates internal order. Fourth, establish one non-negotiable routine. Just one. For most men, I recommend this. Wake up at the same time every day, make your bed, and move your body for 20 minutes. That's it. You're not training for a marathon. You're building proof that you can make a commitment and keep it. That proof compounds. Fifth, cut the toxic inputs. Unfollow the social media that makes you feel like garbage. Stop watching the news that spikes your cortisol before breakfast. Quit hanging around people who keep you stuck in the past or drag you into drama. Your attention is the most valuable resource you have right now. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. Sixth, find one person who's further down the road and ask them how they did it. Not for coddling, not for sympathy, for the blueprint. The man who rebuilt at 45 after a divorce and bankruptcy, he's got knowledge you need. Buy him coffee. Shut up and listen. Take notes. This phase isn't exciting. There's no trophy for clearing debris, but every piece of wreckage you haul away is space for something new to grow. You're not building yet. You're preparing the ground. And the quality of what you build depends entirely on the quality of this preparation. Do the unsexy work. Nobody's watching anyway. Now we get to the foundation. And here's the thing about foundations. Nobody sees them when the house is finished, but they determine whether the whole thing stands or falls. So we're going to build this right, even if it takes longer than you want. First principle, radical responsibility. This is the bedrock under the bedrock. Everything that happens from here forward is your responsibility, not your ex's fault, not your boss's fault, not the economy's fault, yours. I don't care if you got a raw deal, and you probably did. I don't care if life was unfair. It usually is. The only question that matters now is, what are you going to do about it? Radical responsibility is terrifying at first because it means you can't blame anyone anymore. But it's also the most liberating thing you'll ever embrace because it means you have the power to change your situation. Nobody's coming to save you, and that's good news because it means nobody can stop you either. Second principle, integrity over image. You're rebuilding, which means people are watching. Some are rooting for you. Some are waiting for you to fail so they can feel better about themselves. Ignore all of them. The only person you need to prove anything to is the man in the mirror. Do what you say you're going to do. Show up on time. Tell the truth, even when it costs you. Pay your debts. Keep your word. This isn't about being a Boy Scout. This is about building self-trust. And self-trust is the only currency that matters when you're starting from zero. Third principle, earn your confidence back through small wins. You don't rebuild confidence by thinking positive thoughts or repeating affirmations. You rebuild it by making promises to yourself and keeping them. Start small. I'm going to walk 3 miles today. Do it. I'm going to apply to 5 jobs this week. Do it. I'm going to cook my own meals for 7 days. Do it. Stack those wins. Each one is a brick. Each one whispers, you can trust yourself again. That whisper gets louder over time. Fourth principle, build for stability, not flash. The old you might have been chasing the big score, the shortcut, the impressive thing that makes people notice. The new you builds boring and solid. You get the steady job, not the exciting gig. You save the emergency fund before you buy the new phone. You fix your credit before you lease the truck. I know it's not sexy, but you know what's sexy? Not losing everything again, sleeping through the night because you've got 3 months of expenses in the bank. That's sexy. You're not building a sandcastle anymore, you're building a fortress. And fortresses take time. Here's where most men quit. Not at the bottom. Everybody's got adrenaline at the bottom. Not at the top. That takes care of itself. They quit in the middle. The long, boring, unglamorous middle where nothing seems to be happening. You've been at it for 6 months, maybe a year. You're doing the work. You're showing up. You're keeping your commitments. But the progress is so slow it feels invisible. You're still driving the beat-up car. Still in the small apartment. Still single. Still rebuilding credit. Still not where you thought you'd be. And the temptation comes in hard to quit, to cut corners, to say, forget it, and slide back into old patterns. Because at least the old patterns were familiar. At least they didn't require this much discipline. This is the test. This is where character gets built or breaks. Let me tell you what the middle is actually doing, even though you can't see it. It's rewiring your brain. Every day you choose discipline over impulse. You're building new neural pathways. Every time you do the hard thing when you don't feel like it, you're becoming a different kind of man. The kind who doesn't need motivation because he's got something better. Systems. The middle is where you stop relying on feelings and start trusting process. You work out not because you feel like it, but because it's Tuesday and you work out on Tuesdays. You meal prep not because it's fun, but because it's Sunday. And that's what you do. You apply for jobs not because you're optimistic, but because you committed to 10 applications a week. This is also where you've got to guard against the comparison trap. You're going to see guys on social media who seem to be lapping you. Younger guys with more success. Older guys who never had to rebuild. Your buddies from high school who kept their marriages together. It's going to sting. Here's what you do. You close the app and get back to work. Their race isn't your race. Their timeline isn't your timeline. You're rebuilding from rubble. They're renovating. Completely different projects. The middle is also where you learn patience. Real patience. Not the kind where you're white-knuckling it, waiting for results. The kind where you trust the process so deeply that you don't need to see results every week. You're planting an oak tree, not a tomato plant. And here's the secret. The men who make it through the middle don't make it because they're more talented or luckier. They make it because they didn't quit on a Tuesday in month 7 when nothing was happening. That's it. That's the whole game. Stay in the middle. Trust the process. Keep your head down. The breakthrough's coming. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Relationships. When you're rebuilding from rubble, your relationship landscape looks like a disaster zone too. Maybe you're divorced. Maybe you burned bridges with friends. Maybe your family doesn't trust you anymore because you let them down. And now you're wondering, how do I rebuild trust? How do I let people in again? How do I not repeat the same mistakes? First truth, you can't rebuild trust by talking about it. You rebuild it by being trustworthy over time. Consistently, boringly, reliably. If you say you're picking up your kid at 6, You show up at 5:55. If you borrow $20, you pay it back without being reminded. If you commit to something, you follow through. Trust is rebuilt in 1,000 small moments, not one grand gesture. Second truth, some relationships aren't meant to be rebuilt, and that's okay. Not every bridge that burned needs to be reconstructed. Some of those relationships were built on a version of you that doesn't exist anymore, or they were toxic to begin with, or the other person has moved on, and that's their right. Respect that. Let them go. Focus on the relationships worth rebuilding and the new ones worth building. Third truth, you've got to learn to be alone without being lonely. A lot of men rush into new relationships because they can't sit with themselves. They need someone, anyone, to validate them or distract them from the work they should be doing. Don't do that. This season is for rebuilding you, not auditioning for someone else's approval. Get comfortable in your own company. Learn to cook a good meal for one. Take yourself on a drive. Sit with your thoughts without needing to fill the silence with noise. The man who can't be alone is the man who will settle for the wrong relationship just to avoid the quiet. Fourth truth, when you do start building new relationships, friendships, dating, whatever, be honest about where you are. Not in a trauma-dumping first date oversharing way, but in a I'm rebuilding my life and I'm serious about doing it right way. The right people will respect that. The wrong people will bail. Both outcomes are good. And here's the thing about building relationships when you're older and wiser. You've got standards now. You're not desperate. You're not collecting friends to impress people. You're looking for quality, people who challenge you, support you, tell you the truth, and show up when it's inconvenient. You're also bringing more to the table than you realize. You've got depth. You've got humility. You've got scars that turned into wisdom. The man who's never failed is surface level. You're not. Build slow, choose well, and don't apologize for protecting your peace. Stop for a second and look back, not with regret, with perspective. Look at how far you've come from the bottom. Maybe it's not where you want to be yet, but it's not where you were. And the distance between those 2 points, that's growth. That's proof. You're not the same man who hit rock bottom. You can't be. That man didn't have the tools you have now. He didn't have the clarity. He didn't have the scar tissue that taught you what matters and what doesn't. He was operating on autopilot, or ego, or fear, or someone else's script. The man you're becoming is different. He's been tested. He knows what it's like to lose everything and keep breathing. He knows what real failure feels like, which means he's no longer controlled by the fear of it. That's power. Quiet, unglamorous, but real power. The man you're becoming doesn't need external validation the way the old you did. He's not performing for an audience. He's not trying to prove anything to his ex, his father, his old boss, or the guys from high school. He's building for himself and the people who actually matter. That shift from external to internal is everything. The man you're becoming is also more selective about who he spends time with, about what he puts in his body and his mind, about what opportunities he chases and which ones he walks away from. He's learned that no is a complete sentence and that protecting his peace is more important than being liked. He's got humility now, not the fake kind where you put yourself down to seem relatable. The real kind, where you know your limits, where you can admit when you're wrong, where you can ask for help without shame. Humility is not weakness. It's the foundation of wisdom. But here's what I want you to understand. The man you're becoming isn't finished. You're not going to wake up one day and be done. Growth doesn't have a finish line. You're going to keep evolving, keep learning, keep refining. And that's not a bug. That's a feature. The work you've done in this rebuilding season is setting the trajectory for the rest of your life. The habits you've built, the character you've forged, the way you handle adversity now, all of it compounds. You're not just rebuilding to get back to where you were. You're building something better, something that can weather the next storm, because there will be another storm. There always is. But this time, you'll be ready. You'll have the foundation. You'll have the tools. You'll have the proof that you can take a hit and still stand. That's the man you're becoming. And brother, that man's going to be just fine. Let's bring this home. You started this journey in the rubble, wondering if you'd ever get back on your feet. And here you are, not perfect, not finished, but standing, building, moving forward. That alone is a victory worth honoring. But let's talk about what comes next, because rebuilding isn't just about survival. It's about legacy. And I don't mean some grand monument with your name on it. I mean the ripple effect of a man who refused to stay down. Your kids, if you've got them, are watching. They're learning more from your comeback than they ever learned from your success. They're seeing that failure isn't fatal, that you can lose everything and still rebuild with dignity, that a man's character is measured not by how high he climbs, but by how he handles the fall. That's a legacy you can't buy or fake. Your friends who are struggling in silence, they're watching too. The ones who are one bad month away from their own rock bottom. The ones who are pretending everything's fine while their world's falling apart. Your rebuild gives them permission to start theirs. It shows them it's possible. That's legacy. And the man you're going to be at 50, 60, 70, he's going to thank you for the work you're doing now, for not giving up, for not taking the easy way out, for building something real instead of something that just looked good. That's legacy too. Here's the thing about starting over at 30, 40, or 50. You don't get the luxury of coasting anymore, but you get something better. You get purpose. You get clarity. You get the chance to build a life that's actually yours, not the one you thought you were supposed to have. And when you're on the other side of this, when you've got steady ground under your feet again, when you've rebuilt something you're proud of, you're going to be the guy who other men come to. The one who understands. The one who doesn't judge. The one who says, yeah, I've been there. Here's what worked for me. That's when you realize the rubble wasn't just something you survived. It was something that forged you into someone who could help others survive theirs. So keep going. Keep doing the work. Keep showing up, even on the days when you don't want to. The man you're becoming is worth it. The life you're building is worth it. And if this resonated with you, drop a comment and let me know where you are in your rebuild. What's the hardest part for you right now? And if you're not subscribed yet, do that now, because we're in this together and the conversation doesn't end here. You've got this, brother. Now go build.